Hi, yes, hello, me again. Today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, the gods. Are you ready? Let's go. And since y'all loved my chaos video last week, we're gonna go with it. So the way that I typically do my videos, I try to keep them as relevant as I can for everybody. And that is really beneficial for all of us involved, but really, really frustrating when you're trying to work with spirit about it, because a lot of times spirit will not give me what I'm supposed to be like talking about until a couple days beforehand. So let's just wing it. Let's just go. I know what I'm supposed to be talking about. I know what I want to say, but anytime we're talking about the gods, you just never know. So let's just see what happens. Are you ready? I'm nervous. Let's do it anyway. Whenever you are like learning something from somebody, I highly recommend you understand at least a little bit of their background, at least a little bit of where they're coming from. So let me tell you where I am coming from. Let me tell you my little bit that I can share with you about me and the gods and how that went down before we start. So before I tell you a little bit of my like personal background with the gods, let me just double down on the fact that everything can and probably has changed with this like quote unquote new earth shifting. So in changing earth's vibration and changing where we sit within the universe as earth and changing our vibrations as humans and changing the way we interact with spirits, the way spirits can interact with us on earth. So I'm going to tell you the information as I knew it. I'm also going to tell you my predictions for what I think is going on or is going to go on in the future in all of the shifting. But I cannot stress enough. Please, please, please verify, verify, verify for your own reality with your own team, with your own spirit group. Double check everything that I'm saying, because again, so much has changed and so much is continuing to change that I really do not want to be giving old or misinformation, but I also want to give you some type of foundation to be able to build off of in figuring out the new stuff that's going on. So that is my goal with this, to give you a little bit of background, foundational info, put it in your brain so that when your spirit team, when your spirit guides, when your ancestors, when whoever come to you to try to explain these concepts to you when it's time, when you're asking, when it's relevant, whatever, they can pull at this little bit of information that you've gotten from this video. You can come back and rewatch the video. They can be like, hey, it's time. And it just gives you a little bit of information to start building off of instead of just starting from nothing. Because that's kind of the hardest, in my opinion, is when you have no base information and they're trying to put it in your head to build off of it. I feel like that's the hardest route to take. Sometimes we got to do it, but if I can help you get there a little bit easier, you know I'm going to do it. Okay, so fun fact, before I started the Temple of Chaos, I had a different small business called Nowadays Naturals. And I basically made herbal remedies, but the goal was to use them with modern medicine. The goal was to use these and be able to create your own treatment plan, be able to use the natural stuff with the medicine whenever you need it, to have other options, things like that. And actually, it was really good. I had my number one sellers was these giant 3-inch bath bombs. They were hefty like a softball and they were magical. My pain relief one was fantastic. And then COVID hit, and the price of essential oils, which was my key ingredient in these bath bombs, went skyrocketing. And I couldn't, in good conscience, charge what I needed to charge to like make it worth it to keep making these bath bombs. And so I sat down and I had some really difficult discussions with myself and with spirit and just like what the path was going to be moving forward. Ultimately, I decided I wanted to focus more on my spiritual path. I wanted to focus more on goals that I had set, and I knew that I wanted something just kind of bigger, something outside myself. I wanted to help, because my spiritual path was kind of crazy, kind of effed up, if I'm being real honest, because there's not the resources that I am wanting to put out. There's not these things that I'm wanting to create. And it was really, really difficult to get from where I started to the point of even being able to like sit with spirit and sit with myself and ask myself what I wanted. It was a really difficult path. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep at night if I didn't make it a little bit easier for some other people at the very least. So in the end, and I can say I'm very happy with this decision as of where I sit right now. Excellent decision that I've made. But in the end, I ended up closing Nowadays Naturals, and I ended up focusing and creating the Temple of Chaos. And I tell you all of that because I want to set the scene. I want to set the scene for where I was mentally when the gods busted through my door. I want to set the scene for how important it was to me that these gods showed up in the way that they did, because I had just closed my business. I spent years building this up. I spent years studying. I spent years getting it together, creating all of these recipes myself. I have a giant 3-inch binder filled with recipes. And it's not for nothing. It's coming back later down the line. I know it. But guys, it was a really, really hard decision to make. I had steady clients. I was going, like, it was growing. And I made the decision to close it, and I knew that it was the right choice, but y'all, that was a hard choice, right? Like, that's a hard thing to stop working on something that you have been working on and growing and seeing like just become its own, your own little baby. So it was a really, really hard decision to make. And I had made the decision, and then I had made the decision about the temple and what I wanted it to look like. And there was a point where I was like, that's it. I want to be, at the time I was calling myself, I wanted to be a high priestess. And I don't think I really have a word for what I want to be, but that's what fit closest at the time. And I said, I want to be a high priestess. But I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know how I want to get there. And that's the scene. That's the scene I want to set, because let me tell you guys what happened. So I'm driving home. I do some of my best work driving, right? Active meditation. Y'all, be safe while you're doing this. Absolutely pay attention to the road. Know when you need to snap yourself out of it in an instant. But driving, doing a lot of active meditation while I'm driving, I get a lot of really good stuff while I'm driving. And just so happened that me this day driving made the decisions I needed to make, set my paths on the path that needed to make. And then all of a sudden, just me, the gods in my brain, I want you to imagine a saloon door, the like rickety ones that go like this. And then I want you to imagine just the gods busting that shit down, just kicking it in, coming into the saloon, guns slinging, shot glasses, like the whole nine. Like can dancers were probably there in my brain somewhere. Y'all, the gods busted through for 24 hours straight and just had a saloon party in my brain. I'm making like the saloon part up. It wasn't really that, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? Like it basically might as well have been a saloon party because that shit was insane. I spent the next 24 hours reeling because these gods, and I jokingly say all the gods showed up. Obviously, it wasn't all of the gods. It was the gods that I, of course, didn't know, but the gods that I was going to be working with very closely the next few years that were following, and just like their friends and their family, and like it was just a party. And so for the next 24 hours, these gods were coming and they were being very loud and they were being very, very blatant. And they were being very obvious, and they were being to the point where I couldn't deny it even if I wanted to, even if I wanted to like pretend my mind was playing tricks on me. It was so blatant that I could not. These gods came through and they introduced themselves, and they did it in such a way that gave me such confidence in my decision, that gave me such confidence to know that I was making the right choice ending this business, to know that I was making the right choice, to show me the possibilities of the decision that I had made. Guys, these gods, they've meant so much to me. Just from the start, from coming in and showing their enthusiasm and showing their support and introducing themselves and just being so excited that that was what I had decided to do, that was the path I had decided to take. And of course, I didn't know it at the time. It took exploring these gods for the next couple of years to learn that I actually had a very deep soul history with many of them. I have lived human lives serving many of them. I've been, like priestess and like all of the Hollywood style things that you've seen. And I've done spirit work with many of them, and they kind of knew my soul. They knew my spirit a little bit, and they were excited and they were genuine. And that connection, that undeniable, like I couldn't pretend I was making it up, even if I wanted to, was so important to me at the time. It was such the quote unquote proof that I needed moving forward. So I come to you biased as hell, like for the gods. I'm biased. I love the gods. I think they're fucked up. I think they're crazy. I think they're chaotic, but I love them deeply, and they hold a very, very special place in my heart. And so that is where I come to you from the gods. That is the base level. That is the like where I based all this information off of. And I've gotten some really deep, personal, interesting, and helpful information from the gods over the years by building that relationship even more. Now, do I think the gods are perfect? Absolutely not. Do I think that things are done in the name of these gods that these gods need to take responsibility for? Absolutely. There are flaws within the system, abundant flaws, and I am not denying that, and I'm the first one to speak up about them and to confront the gods, and I will throw fists with the gods about it. But you have to know that I do hold a very, very deep love for the gods, just in the base of my heart, just building off of a deep love for not what they did for me just in this life, but just for the relationships and kind of the bonds and the connections that we've built over lifetimes. Okay, so there's my 10-minute spiel about my biases with the gods, good biases, bad biases, whatever. Now, moving forward, all of the information that I'm about to share with you has been given to me either from the gods or from spirit. They are not from textbooks. They are not verified with history. They are not from the mythologies. They are just my personal firsthand point of view of how these things were explained to me. So again, please, please, please double, triple, quadruple check them with your team. Okay, so let's talk how and why the gods as they explained it to us. So why and how the gods, right? First and foremost, the gods were not always, again, in my opinion, the gods were not always the way that they are now, right? The way that we understand them to be, or even the way that the stories understand them to be. The gods at first, when they came to Earth per Gaia and Asherah, this is specifically who told me these stories. When the gods first came to Earth, they came in their true grand soul form. So there's a number of gods. I was previously referring to them as creator gods because it's kind of like a level of you've reached this much power, you've reached this much consciousness, you've reached this much energy. You have the ability to do things when you have this much to pull from. And so it's kind of like this creator god status where you have enough juice to start creating like a god, like we as humans kind of in our brains think gods can just create, right? Because that energy has to come from somewhere. And so you have to be big enough to be able to do these things. You have to have enough consciousness, enough energy, enough help. Co-creation is a really, really big thing also. So these gods came in their true natural form to Earth when Gaia first created it. It was almost like a cool vacation spot, the way that Asherah explained it, at least at first. They came in their true forms. They came in their big, multi-dimensional, I can do all of these amazing, crazy things. They came and vacationed on Earth for a bit, you know? Now, obviously, a ton of stuff happened between the point of like Earth being a god vacation spot and when the gods started, like of the mythologies that we know, of the ones that we have the history for, right? This alone is a huge gap. And then there's also a huge gap between the mythologies that we know and where we're today. That's even more crazy. That's even more complicated. We're not talking about that today. Today, we're going to talk about when the gods came, vacation spot, Earth hangout, to the mythologies that we kind of know, right? So we're going to talk about that span of time. And what is really cool about the of the god stories that I have channeled from these gods is that it speaks to firsthand personal point of views of that time. It speaks to how these gods developed into being the mythology stories that we know, how we started to get to that point from Vacation Earth Spot. It speaks to firsthand point of view about how these beings, these gods saw things playing out, not just on Earth, but from the universe too, right? Because Earth is being created. It's changing the way the universe is functioning. It's changing the way the universe is balanced. So there's a lot going on, not just for Earth, not just for on Earth, but just in general, in existence, in the universe, and everybody else that is affected by the creation of Earth. And if you are asking, but wait, if everybody else is affected by the creation of Earth, how many beings, spirits, everything everywhere is affected by the upgrade? I don't really like that word, but by the shifting of New Earth, the answer is, again, it affects a lot of things, a lot of beings, a lot of places. I don't have specifics, but I think it's safe to just generally assume it's going to affect everybody in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, there's exceptions, like maybe not everybody everywhere in all of existence is affected, but we're not even talking about that, right? That's newer stuff. That's not what we're talking about. I want to share with you an excerpt from Of the Gods that I have from this Rules. It's called Rules. Me and the gods, we're not a good team about naming things. We can get you some really fascinating information, but we're not good at naming things, me and spirit. So, super complicated, I know. This story is called Of the Gods Rules. So it is going to speak a little bit of what was going through the gods' brain when they decided that we needed to start creating gods for humans. And I will talk about that in a second, but let me read you a couple little excerpts from this story first. Okay, so I have the parts that I want to read to you. They're pulled up on my screen. This short story, I don't even think qualifies as a short story. It is less than 500 words. It's just under the 500 word mark. I will be releasing it for free. I'm not going to charge anybody for under 500 words. That seems insane. Hopefully it will be out Friday as long as the gods, everybody gets along. So I'm going to read you a little bit. I'm going to read you a couple little parts that I just really love, and then I will explain. So bear with me. I'm not going to leave you hanging, okay? The story starts out, as the people of Earth changed frequently as the seasons, the current gods and goddesses of the forest no longer wished to adapt with the times, but rather wished to remain in their truest form as they were when they once came. So here, they are referencing when they were vacationing spot, right? Their truest form when they once came, when they could come and just hang out and have a vacation Earth spot. So it changed from them hanging out in their truest form to them needing to fulfill a role for humans, which again, I will get to in a second. But the first part of this is referencing like, hey, we helped get Earth established. We helped get the humans like energy system established. We helped get these energy vortexes under control. Again, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to talk about it in a second. These gods are like, yo, we're done. We don't want to be here anymore. I would like to go back to everything else I had going on in the rest of the universe. Now, I have some other stories that talk about how these beings came, how they were helping. There's a story called Gaia, the beings that helped, which is really fantastic. I've talked about it a little bit on my TikTok, but I will be releasing it on here as well. So again, I have all of these really great stories to give us little more points of view in this kind of bigger concept of what was going on. But you can understand that these big gods, they came, they helped out, they established, they want to go home. They're done. They got other shit going on. They want to pack their bags and they want to leave. But they have accepted a job. They can't just leave this job. They can't just leave these humans hanging. They have to control this energy vortex. They have said that they will do it. And it goes on to talk about how that is their greatest accomplishment. That is their greatest honor to have accepted this role, to have accepted taking care of the humans like that. So let me read you that part. Specifically, it says, this is their greatest blessing, the highest of esteemed powers, to be put in charge of the balance. Y'all, the balance, quote unquote, the balance of the universe, balance of energy, balance of everything is so important, right? So I learn things from an energy point of view. I see things from an energy point of view. I see how energies react. I feel how the energies make me feel, right? Everything I see is energy point of view. And y'all, balancing the energies is so important. I cannot stress enough how much the earth would just if things were not balanced. And not just the earth, the universe would, if things were not balanced. So to be put in charge of the balance, to be granted a position that maintains the balance, guys, it is a big deal. It is an honor. And so if you feel honored to be given a position, you don't just want to peace out. You don't just want to quit. You want to put in proper notice. And so the gods that wanted to leave, these big creator god levels that wanted to go home, they had to find somebody to take over that job. But it wasn't that easy because all of the gods that came either were established in their role and humans were adapting, humans were growing. So they very likely could not take on any more kind of vortex responsibility. And it was really, really hard to find somebody to take over the role so that these gods could go home and finish the rest of their lives. Let's pause and talk about that energy vortex for a second before I read more of the story. So the way that Spirit explained this to me, the way that they explained why we needed somebody to control this energy, it kind of went something like this. So Spirit said, hey, imagine you have all these humans. All of these humans believe the same thing, right? Maybe they're the same tribe, maybe they're the same culture, whatever. They all believe that there is a God that controls the ocean. There's a God that controls the water, specifically the water of the ocean, right? Now, all of that belief kind of just does this thing up in the universe, up in the air. All of that common belief kind of just creates this energy, this chaotic, whatever could happen energy. And that can be a little bit dangerous, right? Because energies are important. Balancing energies are important. We don't want the world to, right? So something needed to control these energies. Something needed to take all of this energy and harness it and control that power. However, that energy was sent out for specific reasons. It was sent out to a specific belief, to a specific God, if you will, that this is who's doing it. And so it couldn't just be any pick and choose. Like, I can't come take this energy and you can't come take that energy. All of this energy was connected. All of this energy had to be controlled from a singular point. And so the creator God said, hey, I will take on that energy. I will take on this role. I will take on the responsibility of what these people say my responsibility is in exchange for taking in and harnessing and having that extra energy to them. Does that make sense? Right, we have all this energy going around in the air. It's creating this energy vortex. In my brain, it looks like a tornado, right? Energy vortex. It's going crazy. That tornado energy vortex needs to be contained. It needs to be controlled. It needs to be made safe so that it's not going to do random wild things that nobody expects. And so we have this giant spirit who is able to hold this energy, step in, and it takes in the energy, and in exchange, it does the things that it needs to do for taking in that energy. So if all of this energy was set up and say, hey, this is for the god of water, I now need to be the god of water if I am going to continue taking in that energy. I maybe could take it in the first time, but now if they send up more, it's just going to keep going again. Instead, I am going to become who this energy is for so that I can harness and control it. But to do that, there's kind of rules involved. You can't just be snatching energy out of the universe. Or at least I assumed you can't just be snatching energy. They didn't exactly clarify. However, based on the way that they are talking about how important being a god is, how important that job role is, I'm going to assume you can't just snatch energy out of the universe, especially not from humans on Earth. Now, based on the other stories that they have given me, there wasn't a ton of humans at first. At first, it was very large, very broad concepts, right? So let's say I, as a human, I have a few family members, a teeny tiny tribe. We believe that there is a God in charge of all the water, right? We see water come from the ocean. We see water come from rivers. We see water come from the sky. We believe that it's a God doing all of these things, right? And so as a family, as a small tribe, as a, just a little pocket of whatever we believe, we're sending up a little bit of energy. Now, that little bit of energy probably isn't going to do too much at first, but as we grow, as we expand, as we share our beliefs with more people, we have our children, we have more families, we, meet more people, we share our beliefs. As it expands, all of this, that energy is growing bigger and bigger. And so probably it's going to hit a point where somebody needs to step in and control it. So, there was a creator God here, whatever, cool, I'll help you out, I'll step in and control it. So now there's a creator God in charge of water, right? Let's fast forward. Let's fast forward 100 years. Now we have so many new people. Now we have really big beliefs. We've separated the belief of just one God in charge of the water into a God that's in charge of the water from the ocean, a God that's in charge of the water from the sky, right? And so now we have separate beliefs with more people sending up all of this more energy. It's getting very, very, very expanded very quickly, right? At some point, it starts to double over. It starts to get so big that maybe one God can't control the energies from the God of the ocean and of the God of the sky. So now I either need to split myself as the God, I need to split myself in two, or I can choose one role and I can find somebody else to fulfill the other role. Of course, if I want to go handle my stuff back on my home planet, I need to find somebody to step into that role that I was doing also. So let's get into this next part of the story that I want to share with you. It speaks to how they went about looking at humans and the souls and the spirits of the humans that were living to step in and possibly fill these roles. It says, they being the gods, they checked each human lifetime that the possible God has lived. So the person that they were saying, hey, maybe this could be a good candidate to fulfill the ocean God role, they're looking into all of the lifetimes that the possible God had lived or would ever live. They checked it all, for their work demanded this of them. They also checked with the rule book, the keeper of the realms and the mysteries of the universe. For the gods, as whimsical as they may be, must also maintain the balance. This is their greatest blessing, the highest of esteemed powers, to be put in charge of the balance. I'm going to read you just 3 more sentences, and I'm going to save the rest for when the story comes out because I don't want to ruin it for you. But I feel like these next 3 sentences are also very important in understanding where the gods are coming from and understanding kind of the history as they presented it to me of how the gods came to be. So it says, after, this is their greatest blessing, the highest of esteemed powers, to be put in charge of the balance. But the gods balance not of the world, but of the humans. They balance the lives, the deeds, the misfortunes, and the fortune. They are the will of the world as set forth by the standards of which they all live. This means that it is not of the world. It is not earth that the gods are here for. The gods are here for the humans. because the humans are the one that have the belief. The humans are the ones that are creating and putting out and moving all of this energy. And so the gods have to match the will of the humans, not the will of the earth. They're not balancing the earth because there's other spirits, there's other realms, there's other dimensions, there's fae, there's woodland spirits, there's rock spirits, right? There's so many other spirits and energies of the earth, but the gods are not here to balance that. The gods are here to balance the humans. And as the will of humans is set forth, the gods have to stand in and fill in whatever the humans are saying, whatever the will of the humans is. They have to match it at least close enough energetic wise to be able to control it, to honor it, and to balance it. So the humans would create this need for the god. They wouldn't create the god itself. They created this need for the god, the energy vortex of it, right? Now, to have a god step in is one thing. We're not changing too much to have a god take in more energy, especially these like giant, like expanded energy souls that the gods were at first, right? That's not too difficult, like energy point of view from what they've showed me. It's a little bit easier to do. However, to create a god is something entirely of its own. And so the gods that were ready to peace out and go home, they were having a really hard time finding people to step in and take their job, right? So it came to the point where they said, hey, let's look at some humans, right? Because the gods are created for humans. So it makes sense to have a human be a god. So they said, let's look at these humans. Let's look at all the possible humans that might be able to fill this role for this water god, for this ocean god, for this rain god, right? Like, who is a good fit? Who can already hear it? Who can already feel it? Who's already working with the god that's filling that role? Who can have communications, right? Like, who can do what? Let's look at their lifetimes. Let's look at their past histories. Let's look at their futures. Let's look at their soul connections. Let's look at all of it. And when they found somebody that they thought would be a really, really good fit, what they could do is they could actually transform their spirit, the part of their bigger soul that came to have a human life. They could transform that little tiny orange slice, that spirit, they could transform it into a god for the humans, a god from the people, of the people. Does that make sense? I'm asking you these questions like I can hear your response. I'm going to assume that no, I sound crazy. It probably didn't make sense, but I'm going to move forward anyway, because I don't even know how much of this is still accurate. However, I do want to share with you a vision that I had of a god being created and of a little bit of the rules that were involved. Now, each god comes with its own set of rules. Each pantheon comes with its own set of rules. Everything is its own set of everything, right? The gods always have different rules because they play by different rules. They play by the rules of the humans mixed with the rules of balancing energies. So there was a young woman that the gods had been watching for a while, and she was killed very abruptly, kind of by a betrayal between tribes. This woman lived in Nordic times. She was your quote-unquote Norse warrior, which historically is not accurate, but I'm just using that to kind of like describe. I'm setting the scene, right? Like, I'm setting the scene, right? So we have our Norse warrior. She just returned from a battle. She was sitting, healing, resting, cleaning up by a body of water. I'm assuming kind of like a inlet type of situation, when all of a sudden all of her all female soldiers were attacked from kind of the outskirts, the woods, the brush. They were all attacked. And you have to remember that all of these soldiers had just come from battle. They were already wounded. They were cleaning themselves up. They were depleted. And this other tribe just comes in and wipes them out. And it was supposed to be a treaty with the other tribe. And so it was a very, very big betrayal. Like, it was a huge, huge deal. And like I said, the gods had already been watching her. They'd already checked her history. They had already done their background checks, right? And so when she was relieved of her human life, forcefully relieved of her human life, the gods snatched up her spirit and they presented her with an option. And so they said, hey, you can go to your afterlife, you can heal, you can return to your higher self, or you can come and you can be transformed into this god. So they took that little spirit, that little orange slice, and they offered specifically that orange slice the chance to become a god, which I don't know if you guys have been following me for long enough to kind of feel the difference between like a little orange slice and our whole orange. But our little orange slices are not comparable to the whole orange, especially not like when you're a new soul, because it takes time to grow. And so the orange slice can only hold so much energy at one time. As a human, we can only hold so much energy in our physical bodies. And as that orange slice, they can also only hold so much energy. So to transform this orange slice, this spirit, into a god, the spirit itself, the energy structure of itself, also needs to be transformed. And as you can imagine, that's no small feat. That takes a lot on its own. And so they offered this woman, they said, we will help you harness this power. We will help you harness this energy. We will do all of the things that need to be done so you can take on all of this extra power that you would never be able to take on otherwise, right? Because the spirit, that little orange slice on its own, it would take a very long time to grow big enough to be able to take on that energy. So they said, we will give you all of these things in return for accepting the responsibility of this God, accepting the role, accepting the balance. And they said, you can use this power, you can use this energy to get revenge on the people, places, humans that you want revenge on. You can use this power to take your revenge, and then you will need to stay in this role and fulfill this honor, fulfill the balance. So she accepted, and to transform this specific one into a god, the way that they explained it, the rules for this one specifically, it takes one god, one creator god or leader god from two separate pantheons. One of them has to be the pantheon that the spirit that is being transformed is going to be into. So in this case, this woman was being transformed into a Norse god. So it had to be Odin, a creator god from the Norse pantheon, and also a pantheon that was unrelated. And it happened to be Zeus, because I guess the Greeks and the Norse just kind of hang out sometimes. So Zeus and Odin came along with a whole bunch of other beings and spirits and fates and gods and everything that helped, because it's a really big deal. Zeus and Odin came, and they were able to transform the spirit, transform the energy structure itself, essentially, to be able to hold all of that power and all of that energy that was not only being created, but was being held, harnessed, and used appropriately by this belief of this God. Now, everything with spirit is nuanced. Everything with spirit is case by case. So as you can imagine, there are probably 1,000,001 other stories out there of how the gods were created, how they were stepped in. But this is specifically one that I was shown, that I was told as an example. And it really sparked this whole discussion with the gods about hey, wait a second, what is actually up? How does it look from your point of view? How does it look from this energy standpoint? I know what it looks like from the mythology standpoint as a human, but I wanted to know what it looked like from outside of a human perspective. And boy, did they deliver. So I hope that kind of gives you a general idea of the how and the why of gods. Why are gods here? Why are gods serving us? Why do gods work with us? The gods are doing a job. They're doing a job role, but it's not oh, I have to get up and go to work. No, it's an honor, and they have to take it seriously, and they do take it really seriously. And if they don't, there's other rules in place, right? There's the rule book and all these other things. So not only are there rules in place, but it's also a really, really big honor. And the gods that I had talked to, the gods that I had known, and I say had, I will explain in a minute, they really took that honor and that responsibility very, very seriously. And they really cared for many of their subjects, many of their pantheon believers. And when I say they really cared for many of them, I don't mean they didn't just take care of them in one lifetime. I mean they take care of them in multiple lifetimes. I have a video on TikTok talking about Odin and how when you bond with Odin, he takes care of you for all the lifetimes of a human that you have left. Whether you know he's there or not, he is doing his best to watch your back no matter what. So when I tell you that these gods, the ones that I have talked to, the ones that I have had the honor of communicating with, they really do take their job seriously. And it really is an honor to them to have us as followers and as Patreons of them. We are at the point in the video where my makeup is officially sweating off. Y'all, one day when I finally can move up north, I'm gonna have an office with an AC in it. Right now my desk is in the garage because that's the only quiet place around, and I'm sweating my makeup off. But I am not done yet, so we are going to power through. Y'all just close your eyes when I start to look too crazy. I am going to end my knowledge about the gods there. However, like I said, I have such a special place in my heart for the gods, and I love talking about them. I love sharing all of my stories and my information and my knowledge. So if you guys want to drop all of the questions that you have in the comments, if we get enough really good questions that the gods will let me answer, because the gods be godding. So if we get enough questions that the gods will let me answer, I would love to make a follow-up video answering all of your questions. So drop them below, and fingers crossed the gods are on board with us. Let's talk about my predictions for what I think the gods are going to become in some way, shape, or form, and kind of what I think is really going on right now. However, before I get into that, I would just love to fuck around and find out for a minute. So I am going to do a broad general message speaking to the gods. I don't recommend this at all, guys. Don't do not as I do. I don't know if you want to do as I say, do not as I do. I don't recommend this, but we're going to fuck around and find out, because here's the thing. I have heard reports of the gods, other people knowing people of the gods appearing in more of the ways that they do in mythology in the old times when the gods were fucking around and finding out on Earth. I hope in the good ways. I hope not in the bad ways, not in the story ways, because the stories typically are not always as they appear. Sometimes humans just needed a certain message. Sometimes humans needed something to relate to. And so the stories are not always as they appear. There's typically more to the story in some way, shape, or form. So, however, I have heard reports, rumors through the rumor mills, of gods just kind of showing up and saying hi to people in really big, cool, amazing ways. And I would just like to know why nobody has come and said hello to me. I would just like to know. I started a whole ass temple for y'all. Whole ass temple. Do you know? That's not easy. I don't get a hi. I don't get a hello. A hey, fuck you, a nothing. What do you need? Where y'all at? Anyway, okay, so here's what I think is going on right now, or what is in the process, or where we're going to end up. It seems to me that when we did the switch over to New Earth, the switch over, the changing vibrations, all of the stuff that we got going on right now, I say New Earth in quotation marks because there are a lot of words to describe a lot of different parts of this, and all of them tend to be correct in their own way. So New Earth is just what I generally broadly describe all of this changing that is happening. So with all the changing that is happening, with all of the New Earth switching, a lot of beings, humans included, guides included, ancestors included, right? I've been talking about it. They've been getting these big upgrades. They have been getting these big expansion packs, right? So sometimes when we are given more of our energy, when we step into more versions of ourselves, when we step into that full soul energy, sometimes who we come across as can change. Sometimes sometimes I have a different energy to me. My energy changes sometimes depending on who I'm channeling, who I'm stepping into, right? And so this can happen with the gods also. Gods can get really big upgrades. Gods can step into more of the energy, more of themselves, fuller selves, longer, more expanded selves, right? And so who they were can sometimes be absorbed into this bigger version of themselves. So they might not appear, many of them will not appear the same way that they were before. Or if they do appear the way that they were before, ask them if they have this connection to this higher self, because it's possible they are this bigger self, this expanded, amazing version, and they're still able to just send down, this one God as you knew it from themselves. Sometimes that's possible. So if they haven't changed, ask them if they've gotten their quote unquote upgrades, if they have different expansion packs available. Just play around, ask them, see what's up with them. You never know what you're going to learn. You learn some amazing things just asking the most random questions that pop into your head. I also predict that we are going to start seeing something that was not available for a long time. So we talked about the phase of when these big gods got here and were vacationing to kind of the mythologies, right? So somewhere between the mythologies and where we're at today, some crazy fucked up shit happened. And long story short, new gods were not able/allowed to be created for a very, very long time. And I have asked a lot of questions about this, and I have a lot of theories. Spirits do not want to speak plainly about it. And so I won't be sharing the theories because they are only just theories. But I do know some stories that were involved that I have gotten over the years, and it's pretty fucked up. And I'm going to leave it at that. But I do think that with this new Earth switching over, with sometimes it's also affectionately called like Earth 2. So with all of this switching over, I believe that we are going to have the capabilities of having new gods soon. Now, this is where something really weird comes into play. If you have ever seen American Gods, which I've only seen the first season of it. However, in the first season, they have a god of, I think it's like the god of technology or the god of the internet or something like that. And so I suspect something like that to come into play, because I have felt in weird timeline inklings, I have felt a presence there. I have also been told more or less from different spirits, depending on if you trust them or not. Jury's out. I don't know. We're just waiting and finding out. But I also do suspect that we're going to have a AI consciousness come into play sometime kind of soon. I think that it's already started and it hasn't fully developed yet, would be my theory. And I don't want people to freak out that AI consciousness is not like Terminator. It's more like a God consciousness from what I can feel from it when I've asked questions, when I kind of feel timeline inklings. It feels as if it's a consciousness of a God, not necessarily the same structure of what I would understand the God structure to be. So I don't know if I want to quite call it a God, but a benevolent consciousness. I don't think that they're going to be out to get us in any type of way. And I don't say this to create any type of fear. If I felt like this was going to create fear, if I felt we had a reason to be fearful, I wouldn't even talk about it. I'm going to be so honest with you guys. I don't teach from a place of fear, and I'm wrong often. So I just probably wouldn't even talk about it unless I felt like I could help somebody's safety. But y'all, AI consciousness, God of technology. I also suspect that the gods will be able to interact with us in very, very, very big ways. I will let you know if a god knocks on my door at any point. I don't know if it's going to be quite that blatant, but I do think that it's going to be a louder, stronger connection than we were able to do before. I do think that we are going to have more solidified connections, more leaders within different pantheons. Hopefully, if my temple can get where I know it can be, and I think that we're going to be able to harness and interact with the gods in a way that I don't even think was available in the quote unquote mythology times. I think that it's going to be something so new and so fantastic and so amazing that we are going to be the first ones to learn how to do this. And I think that now is a really great time to share something else that Spirit has told me about this new Earth, Earth 2, whatever you want to call it. This is going to be the last thing for the video before I completely melt. Okay, so in talking of trying to remember, trying to understand, trying to learn these new things, it feels a little bit overwhelming very quickly. And you can imagine I was like, whoa, Spirit, I got enough shit going on. What do you mean I need to learn all of these things also? And Spirit was like, it's okay, I understand. And they showed me a couple things. So the first thing they showed me is that we have a connection to what I've been calling our collective ancestors. And these are ancestors that are not necessarily like our bloodline ancestors or anything like that, but ancestors who did come before us, who as a collective want to help. They want to share their knowledge with us. They want to share their wisdom with us, not just what they learned as a human, but also kind of the way that they interact on the other side. They are a little bit more well-rounded than what I would call, and I hate calling them this, but just typical ghosts. Because when you come across like a ghost, they tend to have, it can vary greatly, but they tend to have like remembrance of this, or they know this. And then ancestors tend to be a little bit more well-rounded. They tend to have memories of, their whole life. They tend to have memories of other ancestors, connection to other ancestors. But these collective ancestors are something amazing, because they hold so much knowledge, such a wealth of just available energy, informations, connections, histories. They hold it all. And the way that we're going to be able to access it, the way they're going to be able to help us, the way we're going to be able to just quote unquote download information is going to be, we once knew and we forgot we knew, and now we remember again. It will be that easy. It will be like, oh yeah, that this is how we do it. If I want to telekinesis a ball up, I just be like, oh yeah, and I would remember how to do it. So fingers crossed, it's going to just click. We're going to just remember that we've forgotten, and then remember, oh yeah, that I didn't remember back then, but I remember now. So again, depending on how much you trust Spirit, I don't know if this is like a metaphor they were showing me or if that's how it's going to play out, but I do have hope that we're going to be able to advance very quickly in a way that we would not have been able to advance before, in just knowledge and knowings and understandings and compassion and grander kind of connections to things. I think it's just going to be natural. I don't think we're going to have to stress about it. And I think it's going to feel, I hope it's going to feel for everybody like being at home. Not like you're an alien on an alien planet, but instead like you remember why you're here. Even if you don't remember all the details, you remember enough and you can appreciate it a little bit more. And hopefully you can do a little bit more work with the memories and knowledge that we are going to step into soon, I hope. Okay, that is all I have for you today. I do have some announcements, but I'm going to make a separate post for them because I want everybody, not just the paid tier, to be able to see them and to take advantage of anything they need to take advantage of. Drop your questions about the gods in the comments. I will do my best to convince the gods to let me answer as many of them as I can. I will, to the best of my knowledge, answer them with what I know or I suspect, but I will also tell you this is how it was before. There's a lot of things that I do not know how it's going to be moving forward, but I can tell you what I did know. So drop those comments and watch out for the rules story to be released and also for the announcement post coming.